Hello everyone. So this is going to be the next episode of the Blueprint, which is now going to be a voice-only podcast, because it's just much easier to upload the audio files versus the video files, which there's so many that I've recorded and not been able to upload, or it takes me several days for it to upload, which is crazy and it's frustrating. So it's going to be voice only from now on for these half an hour episodes. Or, well, I don't know if they're all going to be half an hour, it just depends. So today, so this post is actually quite inspired by my last post, which is about the issue of cheating in relationships and how it's not always black and white. And if you haven't heard that, it might be a good idea to go and listen to it either before or after this one, because it is heavily inspired by that one. And so this topic is kind of very difficult for me. It's something I've been struggling with for months, actually, because I come from a very conservative background. I'm an Indian, raised by an Indian family, and I had many limiting behaviors that was controlling my freedom and making me unhappy. One of which is the fact that I went to medical school even though I don't want to be a doctor. I actually spent 8 years in medical school, for various reasons. First in Rome, then in Cyprus. I have graduated, but since then I have decided that I'm no longer willing to stay in a job that restricts my freedom, especially when it's not something that I find fulfilling in any way. It's never been something I've been really passionate about pursuing. I am much more interested in psychology, and that is why during my last 2 years or 1.5 years of medical school, I did an online master's in psychology, and that is something that I want to continue with, in addition to my various other interests. And that includes these podcasts that I've been doing, where I share my insights and knowledge that's sort of from a lot of experience, to be honest, in relationships, and in life in general, because I've been through quite a lot in terms of abusive relationships, abusive family. I am a trauma survivor, and I started these podcasts as a way to heal myself, and I continue them because I realized that me speaking up about what happened to me actually helps others who have been in the same position, who have been abused but did not have that kind of, or were not able to speak up the way I have publicly. And getting that feedback from other people has made me determined to continue doing this, because it helps other people and it also helps me. So it's therapeutic for all involved, basically, if you're listening and as me talking. So after that little brief intro, I'm just going to dive into what I'm talking about today, which is about the concept of an open marriage or an open relationship. I have always been a big believer in monogamy, and that is heavily influenced by my conservative background, but also by my insecurities, because whenever I'm in a relationship with someone or there's someone I'm interested in, I've always been very possessive, jealous, insecure, And that is because of my childhood wounds and attachment styles that have contributed to that insecurity. And our world or society as such is very much ruled by control, and control comes from insecurity. And insecurity comes from childhood wounds. So actually, the whole system of monogamy arises from childhood wounds, is what I realized. And that is a really bad place for a society. I mean, a really bad foundation, a very shaky foundation for a society to be built on. And I plan to do my best to rip down those shaky foundations so we can build on something stronger, which is unconditional love. And that is something I spoke about yesterday that was this morning, but I'm going to post this tomorrow. I had a little nap in the middle, so that it makes me feel like this is another day. Anyways, getting off topic here. I was saying that I plan to sort of rip down those shaky foundations and hope to rebuild on something strong, which is unconditional love. And yes, this is one thing I spoke about in my last post on cheating. And I firmly believe that in a relationship, it's if you think about it, it's kind of unreasonable to expect one person to fulfill all your physical and emotional needs in a relationship. And cheating usually occurs, or unhappiness comes from, loneliness comes from you expecting this one person to fulfill all your needs, and then not being able to do that leads to frustration, leads to resentment, leads to anger and relationship problems, and which then ultimately can lead to cheating or to the relationship breaking down in general. And if we remove the need to be committed, okay, you can still be committed to one person, right? But still have your needs met by multiple people. What is so wrong with that is what I want to ask. And at this point, I want to share a story about my parents, because it was kind of the starting point of my worldview changing. And also another reason is because of my last sort of relationship with my friend, who is the first one who introduced me to this concept of an open relationship and did open my mind to many things. So I'm very grateful to him for that, despite the other issues between us. Actually, in general, I'm very grateful to him because he's the one who helped me to see how conservative I am, or I was even, and change my perspective on many things. And he opened my eyes to many things, and I'm very grateful for the lessons that I got from him, regardless of how things ended. And I feel like I've healed enough to be able to say that, and to say that I hold no resentment anymore about what happened, and that I've let go of the pain. So that was a little bit of a side note again. So let me get back to my story about my parents. So a lot of this, I have to say, is because both of my parents have sort of lied to me multiple times, so it's difficult for me to gain clarity on the truth. But I am leaning heavily on my intuition right now and putting together things that both of them have told me over the years, to figure out how their relationship worked. So there may be things that I have to change later on. I may not be correct, I'm 100% correct, but I'm going to share what I know, and because it does help drive my point across in terms of open marriage or open relationship. So as my parents met in medical school, and what my dad told me is that, both of them have told me at different points that they were basically very kind of open about things. I mean, they were in a relationship, but my dad and my mom actually both were very attractive people, and they both had multiple people interested in them. And also for their time, like, they were very quite progressive, and which meant that they basically were open about their relationship, and they didn't hide it, because in those days, especially in the Indian culture, it's not really normal to be open about your relationship. But my dad basically never wanted to. He was not the commitment type. He was not interested in multiple people, and he didn't want to get married. He didn't want to go to medical school. He was basically a completely free spirit. But his older brother died while he was in medical school, or he had just graduated, I think. And that meant that all the kind of family responsibility fell on my father. So he had three younger brothers who were still either in school or college, and his parents, and basically so many responsibilities. And that's kind of the time that my parents got married. But my dad said, he said, like, he always knew that my mother, if he ever got married, it would be to my mother, because he felt like she was his soulmate. But he didn't want to get married because, like I said, he was never interested. He wanted to be open. And he told me, and this is where I'm not sure if he's actually being truthful, but I don't know, my intuition says he was. And he said that she had basically agreed to this, to him having multiple sort of, to an open marriage, that he had, my dad told me that my mother had agreed to him having an open relationship even after marriage. And they got married, and it was a very a dramatic situation with, them running away, eloping, and getting married, because my mother was from a Hindu family, my dad was from a Muslim family. A lot of and my mother's family was against it, so it was kind of a dramatic thing. But after marriage, the thing about my mother is she's extremely insecure, and she's extremely jealous. And so after marriage, I believe that she went back on her word. And actually, to be honest, I think she never intended to keep her word. She just told my father that she would agree to him seeing other people, because she didn't want to lose him. And she knew he wouldn't agree to marriage otherwise. And she just wanted to be with him. And I believe that's sort of where the toxicity starts to come in quite a bit. So he continued to have relationships with other people, and then my mother basically used that against him. He said the cheating, and I don't know if he actually cheated on her, or whether it was about, it could be like both sides, honestly. My dad has many toxic qualities too, and I really don't know how their relationship works in general. But So on this point, I really don't know. So I'm not going to spend too much time here. But basically, my point is this jealousy and insecurity stems from my mother's unhealed wounds. And that is the reason that their marriage suffered. And that is the root cause of their conflicts and why they never had set a good example to me or my siblings in terms of what a healthy relationship should look like. Because there was always conflict. My mother kind of played the victim role quite a lot, made my father out to be the villain, separated us from my father by basically blatantly lying about certain things, getting my adopted brother to make up stories about things that my father had done, turning us against him from a very young age. And a lot of manipulation, a lot of really toxic things, all born out of jealousy, insecurity, and unhealed childhood wounds, as well as narcissism, but which again comes from unhealed childhood wounds. And this is where I want to talk about the concept of open marriage or open partnership. Because when you are in a secure relationship with someone, you don't need to be jealous. You don't need to be insecure because you know that this person is is loyal to you, does love you. So even if they have an open relationship where they have they find emotional and physical fulfillment with other people, that doesn't take away from their partnership, because partnership is about more than just that physical aspect. And this is where it becomes even more complicated when you have children with someone, because once you have children with someone, you're kind of stuck. You cannot cut that person out of your life, and because they're your child's mother or father, and you cannot cut them off. But that means you end up in a situation where you are stuck and your needs are not being fulfilled. And that could then lead to things like cheating or in general just unhappiness. And it's because of these limiting belief systems that stem from a foundation of childhood wounding and insecurity and toxicity. So if we change our mindset and if we become more open and more relaxed about our sexuality, about these rules that aren't really rules, they're just social constructs, then we will heal a lot of things that are keeping us stuck. I think I'm going to leave it there. I have no idea how long this episode has been. I hope it's not too long. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I want to just leave you with the last message, which is if you resonate with what I've been saying, if you also wish that you were in an open relationship or you're about to be taking that step towards a committed relationship, but you're afraid to tell your partner or potential partner that actually you want to be in an open relationship, please take a risk. Take a risk and tell them, you know what, I love you and I want to be committed to you, but I do need freedom. I do want to be able to see other people, and I really can't be in a relationship where my freedom is restrained. And if you're not okay with that, I don't think I want to be in this relationship. Because ultimately, that's where people cave in. You know, they think, if I speak up for what I need from this relationship, then I'm going to lose this other person. But if you're meant to be, if this person is truly meant to be your partner, then they would be willing to compromise, or at least they should be willing to compromise. And if they're not willing to give you that freedom, then it means that they have wounds that they need to heal. And so this actually could help, this conversation, this you being brave enough to say, you know what, this is what I need. Are you able to give me that? Maybe the sort of turning point in this person's life. Because if they have issues with insecurities, jealousy, and unhealed childhood wounds, then they might react in a very negative way to your suggestion, in a toxic way. And that will be an illuminating thing for them to realize there is something they need to heal. Because trust me, when you have healed your unhealed wounds, your childhood wounds, you will not feel this toxic jealousy. I hope that made sense. And I know it's a very controversial topic. I've been struggling with it for months. But I have also made this decision today that I will not be in a relationship where I'm not given this freedom. And I cannot, because I have always been attracted to multiple people and I've always hated myself for it. But now I don't hate myself for it. Because, again, as I said, expecting one person to fulfill all your emotional and physical needs is unreasonable. And I don't think we're meant to be like that. And if you have doubts, think about the mythology, Greek mythology, Roman mythology. If you look, no, actually Roman, I'm not, is it the same? Yeah, I think it is. And all the gods and goddesses, I mean, there's no concept of, they're all open about their sexuality. There's no, one person belongs to one person, or one god belongs to one god, and that's that. It's also in Hindu mythology. It's just not as obvious because of the, well, it needs to cater to its audience, which is a very conservative audience, unfortunately. But if you pay attention to the subtext in Hindu mythology, there is a clear polygamous element to it. And that's not a bad thing. We've been conditioned to believe it's a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing. It's freedom. And freedom is the opposite of control, and society is designed to control us. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. Until next time.